A loose collective born on the internet. Anonymous, has no official members, and no hierarchy.
Greetings, citizens of the world. Let us welcome you to ZeroSec Deep State Docs 27. John J. McCloy, former CFR Chairman and Chase Manhattan Bank Chairman, used his position as Intel Coordinator for the U.S. government to build the framework of what became the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, created in 1941 to 1942 era, headed by Bill Donovan.
During World War II, Bank was a leading figure in the Office of Strategic Services. The OSS, the precursor to both Special Forces and the CIA, supported a resistance network of partisans in enemy-held Asia and Europe.
The Bilderbergs came from the Council on Foreign Relations, and the CIA, the OSS, became. The meetings held Chatham House rule. A way of discussion, Chatham House originated when the Society of the Elite makeover took the name the Council of Foreign Relations. Chatham House is the British version of the CFR, also called the Royal Institute of International Affairs.
Political policies, sort of like the UK's version of the Council on Foreign Relations.
The American Enterprise Institute that Dick Cheney continues running US policy from. Set up a controlled opposition in that day, using member Phyllis Schlafly since 1946. European Union creator Joseph Ratzinger contacted Nazi Prince Bernhard, who contacted CIA head Walter Bedell Smith, who asked Eisenhower advisor Charles Douglas Jackson, government propagandist and senior executive of Time Incorporated, to create the Deep State. The first conference was held at the Hotel de Bilderberg in oQBk, Netherlands, from day 29 to the 31st of May 1954. This officially homogenized Nazi Big Pharma with Rockefeller oil, which created corporatized government. Mussolini's definition of his created term fascism could now control the West. Meetings happened initially with 66 people in an annual conference. In 1957, the first U.S. conference was held on St. Simon's Island, Georgia, with $30,000 from the Ford Foundation. Henry Ford shared the white supremacy of Rockefeller and Bayer.
This is my Jew flattening machine. It'll flatten any Jew. Simply climb behind the wheel, drive it towards a Jew, and flatten him.
Could you also use it just to drive from place to place and stuff?
It's a Jew flattening machine. It's not what it's designed for.
But you could use it that way.
You could also use the Mona Lisa as a placemat.
The foundation also supplied funding for the 1959 and 1963 conferences. Most highly developed political systems have been controlled by power players, creating binary political parties, subjugating people to unending incremental seesawing between liberal and conservative. Knowing that the initial groups were a senate of 2 people representing the head of each binary group from each corporate-governed nation. This way the agenda outlined in the meeting was enacted and translated for each binary group in each ethnocentric country member's origin, giving people the feeling of the agenda being the belief of the masses, even though today Princeton studies reveal 90% have no representation.
In a 2014 study by Martin Gillians and Benjamin Page from Princeton and Northwestern universities, respectively, they found that the bottom 90% of income earners had an almost imperceptible effect on legislation passed in the United States.
The catchword for this control was Atlanticism, until a decade later Japanese business sat at the table and it was called trilateralism. So it is of no surprise the Atlantic Council, which is the privatized weapons contractors marketing arm of NATO, populated by joint Bilderbergs, and in the next decade, as jargon evolved, in the Trilateral Commission.
But that would be too easy. be too democratic. So instead, legislation is now outsourced. Policy prescriptions are made by think tanks and NGOs like the Council on Foreign Relations, the Atlantic Council, and the Trilateral Commission.
Chief among them, Brzezinski came up with the idea of CIA group Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, aka Tim Osman, which he crafted in the 70s with the Sunni insurgents known as the Taliban to stave Russia. Brzezinski wrote in 70s book Technocracy to realize his Middle Eastern manifest destiny would require an act of terrorism. His manifestation of this terrorism in the Bilderbergs was held to strict Chatham House secrecy.
I'd like to know about the Bilderberg group, sir.
Well, that's not part of...
Nazi Prince Bernhard continued to serve as the meeting's chairman until 1976, the year of his involvement in the Lockheed affair. Lockheed had been bailed out by US tax dollars, which they then used to bribe foreign governments with weapons contracts.
My first question, Mr. Secretary, is, does the Guarantee Board know who received the bribes from Lockheed?
No, we do not, Mr. Chairman.
You know the countries where the bribes were paid?
Only, the countries?
Yes, sir.
In fact, next to directly related Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations, Club Rome, the Bilderbergs are the most secret even in the case of government investigation.
As an urgent question, I rise to ask the Chancellor of the Exchequer to now make a statement on the Bilderberg conference which he attended.
Mr. Speaker, this is the first occasion for me, as I've never previously answered a question in the House of Commons on behalf of a private organisation for which the government has no responsibility. I have actually been a member of the steering committee of Bilderberg for many years now, I think about 10 years, and by chance actually this is my last year because we have a rule against being on the committee for too long, so I'm on the point of stepping down.
The Bilderbergs, formed by Nazi Prince Bernhard with German Farben on the business bedrock of eugenics, creating Standard Oil leader John Rockefeller, was formed as white ethnic nationalism, with the exception of European Spain, that spreads its arms to the multicultural New World Order control groups.
John D. Rockefeller Sr. contributed a large amount of money to build the Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory in the early 1900s. Which housed the Eugenics Records Office from 1910 to 19...
Each time that they have met on U.S. soil, the meetings were held on Rockefeller-owned property. The object of such organization is to enlist key political and economic leaders around the world. In order to gain their assistance and domination, that picture now must include the titans of tech.
And it's become increasingly evident that Bilderberg is not just an important place for global financiers and politicians and those who are in the realm of geopolitical events, but it's also a very important convergence for technology, and that is reflected by its regular attendance from amongst the Silicon Valley elite, who are now heavily represented on Bilderberg's steering committee, and they're there every year, and they're not only covering topics like artificial intelligence and quantum computing, for which they've invited multiple figures from within Google and from other institutions, including MIT, but they're very much focused on the city of the future, the 21st century smart city that they promised everyone.
Yes, we love the opportunities and...
Security forces have been told security to shoot to kill if anyone breaks into their meetings. Though that security has pulled back under scrutiny in recent years. Still, Bilderberg contact is only available to the public via silenced participants going to their meetings.
And you guys are so secretive. We kind of have to figure out some way to communicate, because proper communication can solve anything. That's what I was trying to tell them. They can clear the air right now. Yeah, you guys could clear the air, get rid of the theories. There's so many people making so many bad assumptions about you guys, and you guys could get rid of that right now.
Are you American?
Yes, New York City. What about yourself?
Come over from America for this?
Yes. I came from Canada.
Well, go back.
Really? Why should I go back? I like Copenhagen.
Figures like Fidel Castro, who have spoken to the corrupted deep state that is the Bilderbergs, are consequently maligned in mainstream media. They do the same to journalists like Alex Jones, which has been kicked off of about every viable platform. When they meet, they clear out all the guests and employees in the buildings in which they are to meet.
They used to sort of reply to emails if you sent an email to their website, which popped up in the middle of the 2012 meeting in Sitges. But now they don't reply to emails anymore. They don't like to announce when the meeting's taking place, and we could only manage to get it confirmed through talking to Surrey District Police, who finally let it leak that this important get-together was happening.
They completely debug all the rooms, bring in their own cooks, waiters, housekeepers, heavily armed security guards, etc. They do not allow outsiders anywhere near the meeting place just before, during, and immediately after they meet. The Bilderbergs are not only deep state but, as Assange tweeted, the controllers of mainstream media with CFR and Trilateral Commission. Today the participants are between 120 to 150. From the fall of public education to the invasion in Iraq, the members of the Bilderbergs are directly responsible. The Bilderberg Group's theme is to bolster a consensus around free market Western capitalism. The steering committee usually met twice a year to plan programs and to discuss the participant list. And the NWO fearmongers largely do not see the NWO has happened. US wars now putting the finishing war touches on North Korea and Iran, have systematically knocked down independent countries, enslaving the world to the IMF petrodollar. The NWO is financial and its plans are complete. Bilderberg conspiracy from the John Birch Society are a psyop paid for by Rockefeller, the purpose of which is to sensationalize the so-called Illuminati conspiracy for self-discrediting researchers and keeping them from the awful truth. The New World Order came and went. The war is never over. We are not Jesus. Nor do we have Alzheimer's. Expect us.